Good morning. We've been out and we've been shopping with no mask and it was so nice. You can do what you want. You can wear your mask or not wear your mask, but I'm telling you, the teller we went through, she's been wearing a mask for 2 years now, or how long, and she was just giddy with happiness. She says, I don't know how I'm going to get through the day. I think it was like oxygen shock. It was so funny and so nice to see smiles. So it started the shopping day off nice. And I'm going to do a different kind of video today. And I'm at one of the garden windows. I'm going to discuss what's in each window, but I'm going to move from window to window and then try and join them all up. And while we're doing that, we want to also discuss preparing your orchids for the growing season. Now, most of us that are coming into spring and summer, the growing season is starting. And that, the extra light, the days are longer, that sends a little natural signal to your orchids to grow leaves and flourish. And also, it's getting warmer. So unless you're in a house where the temperature's always controlled, they won't notice that, but they will notice the daylight. And for those of us that as soon as it's warm enough, we move our orchids out to a patio for the growing season. My patio's screened in, so I don't have to worry about bugs. But still, there's something about that extra warmth out there and all the light, not direct light, but light. And they just love it, and they just show it with growth. So that's what I mean by the growing season. But if you're putting yours outside, you also have to consider there's bugs outside. So, our flowers last 4 or 5 months because inside we don't have to worry about pollination, and that's what it's all about. They're trying to be so beautiful to attract pollinators, and when one does, then you're going to lose your flowers quicker. But in the house, we hold our flowers for, I've had mine still in May. There's still some coming. It's just beautiful. Now, we have to watch for a few things before we put them outside. And one thing is that your medium, whatever it is, with me it's bark, is not deteriorated. Now, if you're smart, and I haven't been, you can keep on a little tag with each orchid when you last repotted it, and that will help. Now, the best time under normal circumstances, when it's one of your orchids, you've already changed the medium on, and you're going to change it again. The best time with the least stress to your orchid is as the growing season approaches, so that when you move them to their growing season, then they are all ready to go. It's less stress on the whole plant, but that does not mean you put off an orchid that you bought. Most often, and the Oregon Orchid Society even says it in this article. It says, be aware that many of the mass-produced grocery store orchids are purchased in poor and old media and should be repotted as soon as possible. They are suffocating. Now, most of my orchids are hybrid orchids, and I'm totally used to growing them in my conditions. But if you have a species orchid, you should look up the parentage. You should do all your investigating because some species require different things. Now, the hybrid, no ID, grocery store type orchid, they've been bred to be very easy to grow and hardy. But what happens if they sit around the store too long? You could bring them home and the whole orchid could look really good, but it could also be on death's door. If you look in the pot, the medium could already be suffocating those roots. Those are aerial roots. They're used to being free, like us, without our masks. And they're so much happier when they're free. So they don't want to be plugged up, not getting any air, but that's how they grow them and they ship them to you. So beware. It's not just me. Many places say repot your orchid as soon as possible. I know the flowers are beautiful, but if you're buying that way and quite often marked down, then beware. So anyway, the growing season's coming. You want to make sure you have a healthy medium. If it needs change, change it. Make sure all the roots are healthy. Any that are too soggy will tell you a story, and any that are too dry will tell you a story. And I always grow on the dry side. So mostly just bark, and it's how I grow, and they're accustomed to it. And orchids that are growing in bark are very hardy root system once they've accustomed to it. So we want to make sure that's done. Always when you're watering your orchids, you want to make sure that you're looking under the leaves and in the crevices for any sign of bugs and catch them early. Now that, with me, the only one bugs I had, touch wood somewhere, is scale. And I always look for them, and I just use a damp towel or a paper or a little makeup pad or a Q-tip wet, and I rub them off. And years ago I had quite a few. Now I only see one or two, but I'm always looking. I'm always looking and always keeping up on it. And also, the other thing is that air is, having a fan or a natural source of a light breeze is something that's often not said, but very important. And I found it a big importance. I have ceiling fans, and on watering day I always put them on low, and it helps dry off any, because I water everything. I don't worry about not watering the leaves or the crown. I water everything, and it's just how I do it. My traffic cones are always in the shower. The only thing that doesn't get wet is the flowers. So that fan helps dry them off. However, if there's water in the crown, I always look, and I have a pointed paper towel and I soak it up. And I do clean them off, except summer when I put them outside for the watering and bring them in. And that fan helps deter funguses from moisture sitting in places it shouldn't. And they love that little breeze, especially if they're crowded, even more so. Mine are not necessarily crowded because I have knickknacks here and there. I mean, I could have more orchids, but I'd be watering them forever. So light is what they're going to get. And I also have a fan out my patio, so when it's hot, I put the fan on, because that helps them get used to that hot temperature. So, that's strange. We're going to get a little bit of music. So, the fan is good for bringing down the temperature, but it's also drying out the medium. So you may find when your orchid's in a warmer place that you have to water it more often. Like I water mine twice a week in the summertime. especially the smallpox. So let's look at what's in this window. I do want to discuss my little aquarium. Now, I'm surprised because I have done so much better than I thought I would, because first I tried putting it in, I had them planted either in pots or whatever, and they didn't do so good. Excuse me, I have to go move that thing. Good grief. Okay, I'm sorry about that. So, I threw some comforters over it. It's in the other room, but what do you do? Okay, so now I want to show you, because in the bottom of my terrarium is just glass beads and about that much water. I'd say an inch, maybe to 2 inches of water in the bottom. I mist them maybe once a day. So, but look at what I'm seeing. Okay, this is my poor old phal that had no leaves on this little root at all. And I waited years and I got leaves, and it's been suffering. But since it's been in terrarium, there's a root coming here. This one's coming. So, I think that was doing good. I'm just going to leave it out for a minute because I do want to show you. Now, now you can put, if you have an aquarium, I'm getting tempted to get a bigger one, but I don't know where I'd put it, but then I can use bigger. I've just got an artificial tree thing in there, but I could go bigger. Now, I'm going to grab my flashlight. Let's see. Now, if I still have to mist these every day, but this one, it was on death's door. And I do see tiny little roots coming. Tiny little roots. So, it was all brown dead roots in here, but I do see some green. I'm very happy about that. And you can see on this side how dry it is. The bottom, I never took those off. They're dry, they dry quick. But it's in the front that I see new growth, tiny little roots. There is something happening. So hopefully you can see some of that. I know it's early, but I'm seeing things that, because they're not sitting in any moisture, they're like a mounted orchid, but because of my humidity is always like around 40% in the house, because of that, the humidity, and these, I looked them up, they like 70%. So I haven't watered these this morning, but I am seeing good growth. I'm seeing things happening. You see, there's a new leaf, and way inside there's root growth. Now, I don't know if it shows up. So this is good, and I'm tempted to do it on a bigger scale, but I know it's tricky, but I'm tempted. Now here's this other one. Most of its roots were dry, and it has a root coming here, and it has a new leaf coming. Those are the original roots. They're quite dry. And I think I could get new roots coming, but they're trying. They're trying. So I'm quite happy with it. The little plants I just left in their pots. So they're just in pots, but I didn't even have to water them. They're still quite humid. So, but the things that are mounted, they need misted probably every morning, I'd say. Some of them I just take, like watering day. If I had the black tea going, then I would just dip them in and out. There we should talk about fertilizer too, because fertilizer is overrated in a while, and that's why it's kind of, I think, overrated, because in natural habitat they're not getting fertilized heavily or a lot. And my water schedule, I use a quarter of the recommended fertilizer, and there's only 2 days I'm using fertilizer of my 6-week water schedule, which is once a week watering, but only 2 of the 6 weeks am I using fertilizer, because I'm using natural substitutes like black tea and seaweed extract, but it's spread out over 6 weeks, and I keep track. I'll put a copy of my water schedule in the description for anyone that might want it. But I've had good success with it, and so that's good. So everything is, there's a few dendrobiums, still have a few flowers, and everything, all I have in the square pot is now the maidenhead fern, and it's doing good. It's liking it, and I'm just leaving it because it was a little too dry, and it just wasn't enough humidity for the ones that love 70% humidity. So I'm just going to shut the camera down, move to the under window, and I'll be back with you. When I was at the other window, I forgot to tell you. Now, if you went back and looked and saw the dendrobiums in the window, I have 2 of these. I bend them like so to fit the circumference of the pot, going halfway with one and halfway with the second one. Now, I got these last year at the dollar store, and they ran out real quick. The Dollar Tree had them. So yesterday when we had to go to town, or the day before, I looked and they're in. And if you have a Dollar Tree, and these are great, they're great for holding in any plant that tends to be bushy and you want to hold it back a little. I have 2 of these on my dendrobium in the other window. Now, because I couldn't get one, the dendrobium in this window is in a tomato cage. And it worked fine in a pinch, but these are well worth the investment. I got 4, so I have them handy, because whether it doesn't matter whether it's a Hoya, something that likes to grow on something, or any number of plants. I'm going to be showing you my 2 new little plants, and they also benefit from these. So, you know, run down and get them before spring gets really going. Pick them up. They're for $1.50 or whatever the Dollar Tree charges. It's so worth it. So I wanted to tell you that. Now, the other important thing about the growing season, and if you're moving yours outside, they're getting enough light, because that light is going to encourage really good growth. But if they're not getting enough light, then they're not storing the energy to get your flowers for next year. That is the important thing of light. And these are north windows. And we put little LED strip on one side of each window so we would have lots of light, because being this is the north, it loses its light quickly in the winter, so I can put on extra light whenever I want it by switching on the light. And that's what's important about growing season. You won't get those flowers if they don't store enough energy, and they're going to store it through nitrogen fertilizer, which in the spring, that is what you use. Now we use of the three numbers, the first number come spring is the nitrogen. You want to make sure that they're getting high nitrogen. Also black tea. Black tea is going to give them nitrogen, and other sources. So I use a lot of natural sources and the sunlight. They need that sunlight. And if you've got lots of lush green growth, but they're dark green and no flowers, it's lack of light. So you want to check that out. And I do want to show you this dendrobium. And when I wired these in, this is a tomato cage, but those others look a little nicer, but I have to show you. If you remember, look at this little growth on the end. That's the one that broke right off, right here. It completely broke off when it hit the floor. I clamped it on with a clamp, and it is looking sad, but look at that. There is a growth. Now, it could be a keiki, I'm not sure what it is, but anyway, all is good. So, yes, so these bend quite nicely around any pot and do a wonderful job. Bigger pots, you might need 3 of them. So, run down to the Dollar Tree. Last year I went back and it was too late. So, and in the window here, the extra light, the growing season signaling. New leaves are coming. Roots are starting to take off. So that's your growing season, and you want to make sure that your plants are in really good condition, and then when the growing season started, they're getting nitrogen and sun, filtered sun, not direct sun, but lots of filtered light from all over. That's what's best. So I think that's it from this window. Everything is doing good. I see new growth coming, and we're going to move on to the next window.